It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day that passes unnoticed. Light traffic, scattered clouds, the city quietly exhaling between storms. James had taken the afternoon off, not out of joy, but habit. Emily wanted ice cream and a walk in the park. She always asked for the same bench, under the same crooked tree. And James, who had built skyscrapers and buried grief in boardrooms, always said yes. They were halfway through a cone mint chocolate chip melting faster than memory when it happened. Emily stopped mid-sentence, eyes fixed on something beyond the ducks, beyond the trees. Her fingers tightened around James's hand. "Daddy," she said, "that's my brother." She wasn't pointing at a friend, not a classmate, just a boy, maybe a year older, kicking at pebbles near the fountain. A boy James had never seen. The words hung in the air like a question the wind didn't dare move. James looked closer, and the world for a moment leaned sideways, because the boy had Emily's eyes, not just blue, but a particular shade of storm before rain. And the way his shoulders curled in as he walked, the way he tucked his hands in his sleeves, it was like watching a memory walk outside his body. James said nothing, couldn't, but something in him, a quiet, long-denied voice, sat up. And in that exact second, without meaning to, James Fletcher, a man who had spent years forgetting, began to remember. It took James weeks to find her, not because she was hiding, but because no one had cared to look. Mary Carter lived on the 5th floor of a crumbling walk-up, in a part of the city that James's polished shoes had never touched. As he climbed the narrow stairwell, the scent of boiled rice and rust hung in the air, faintly familiar, oddly grounding. When the door opened, it wasn't just the scent that rushed back. It was memory, sharp as glass. She stood there, thinner, paler, older than he remembered. But her eyes, the same defiant fire. "You came," she said, arms crossed, not inviting. "I had to," he replied, voice low, as if afraid the walls might listen. The apartment was small, worn by time. A kettle whistled on the stove. In the corner, a little boy coughed in his sleep. James's heart buckled. Mary didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You want answers, James? Fine. I was pregnant when they fired me. Your company sent me home with a severance check and a signed NDA. I called your office 4 times. I emailed. I sat in the lobby for hours waiting to be heard, but you were always in a meeting." Her voice cracked, but her gaze never did. "You think I wanted this life for my son? I scrubbed floors, bagged groceries, cleaned other people's homes, while you built empires and gave interviews on legacy." James lowered his head. "I didn't know, you didn't ask." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick with everything they had never said. James looked at Noah, curled up in a blanket that had clearly seen too many winters. "He's mine," Mary scoffed. "He's his own." "But yes, he's yours too. He knows your name. He used to ask if you'd ever come." Then one day, he stopped. Outside, a siren wailed. Inside, the kettle screamed. James turned it off, poured 2 cups of tea. One sat untouched. "I want to help," he said. "Too late." "No," James said, firmer now, eyes on hers. "Not if you're willing to let me try." She studied him, really studied him, not the suit, not the watch, the eyes. "You look tired," she finally said. "I am." "Then you might be ready." Ready for what, she didn't say, but James felt it. He didn't ask for forgiveness, and she didn't offer it. What passed between them that day was not absolution, it was acknowledgement. That sometimes, the most radical thing. The first night was quiet. Noah didn't say much. He sat at the very edge of the velvet couch, his backpack still strapped tightly, as if removing it would somehow make him too visible, too real in a house that wasn't his. His shoes stayed on. His eyes wandered, alert but untrusting. Emily, on the other hand, didn't ask questions. She took his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Come on," she said. "You have to see the stars on my ceiling." And just like that he followed. Two children, untouched by the weight of the past, navigating a new bond with instinct only kids possess. James stayed behind, listening to their footsteps upstairs, to the soft echo of wonder. The sound of innocence reintroducing itself to a house long haunted by stillness. Dinner was pizza, homemade, messy, beautiful. The kitchen smelled of roasted tomatoes and hope. Emily rolled dough like a professional, insisting each slice of pepperoni had to look like flower petals. James couldn't remember the last time he had laughed over flour on his shirt. Noah watched quietly from the corner, arms folded, uncertain. But hunger softened his posture, and Emily's persistence, relentless and kind, chipped away at the walls he didn't know he'd built. When she handed him a napkin and whispered, "You have to fold it like a taco house rule," something inside him cracked open. A smile, small, honest. After dinner, James wheeled out a surprise, a red bicycle, shiny, identical to Emily's down to the silver bell. Noah blinked. "For me." James nodded. "Only if you'll let it be ours." There was no grand hug, no rushing into arms. But Noah placed his hand on the handlebar, looked up, and whispered, "Thank you." His voice, barely audible, carried the weight of years no child should carry. That night, Emily built a fort in the living room. Blankets, pillows, and paper stars. Noah crawled in beside her without hesitation. They talked in hushed tones, giggling at jokes only they understood. James sat nearby, just watching. And then it came. "Dad, can you hand me the bunny?" Time fractured. The word hung in the air. Not dramatic, not even deliberate, just real. James froze. So did Mary, who had returned quietly, standing in the hallway, coat still in her arms. Neither spoke. James reached for the stuffed bunny and handed it into the fort with a trembling hand. Noah took it. No correction, no apology. Their eyes met, James and Mary. No words, just breath. Just the shared knowledge that something irreversible had happened. And not because they orchestrated it, because love, in its quietest form, had moved ahead of them. The rest of the evening passed without mention. Mary lingered in the kitchen while James did the dishes, the silence between them not awkward but full. "He called you Dad," she said finally, voice steady. James nodded. "I wasn't ready for it. I'm not sure any of us are." She glanced down at her chipped mug. "But it means he's starting to believe this is real." "That's what scares me most," James admitted. "That belief is fragile, one wrong move." "But also powerful," she interrupted gently. "You're not the same man who looked away years ago." He looked at her, really looked. Upstairs, under the canopy of Emily's fortress, two children had fallen asleep side by side. Noah's hand rested on the bunny. Emily's foot stuck out from under a blanket. James turned to me. The invitation had not been spoken. It was left in the form of a text message sent late at night. Noah would love to see you again. Emily keeps asking when you'll visit. There was no plea, no guilt, just a door left slightly ajar. Mary stared at the screen for a long time before answering with a single word. Okay. When she arrived at the penthouse a few days later, her steps were careful. She held her purse with both hands, as though it might steady her breath. The concierge greeted her by name, a small, surreal detail that made her feel misplaced, like a character in a dream she hadn't written. James met her at the elevator. He looked different in daylight, less polished, more human. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I'm not here for you," she answered without malice, just clarity. "I know." Noah was in the den building something with Emily. A tower of colored blocks, bright and fragile. When he saw Mary, he didn't run. He didn't cry. He just smiled, a little sleepy, a little soft, as if some part of him had expected her all along. "I saved you a seat," he said, patting the spot beside him. Mary sat, her coat still on. She didn't want to exhale too quickly, afraid the moment might vanish. Emily handed her a plastic dinosaur. "He's the dad," she whispered, pointing to the toy. "He takes care of the babies when they're sick." Mary swallowed. James watched from the kitchen, giving them space. He was making tea. He always made tea now, as if warmth could be poured and shared. The small rituals of his home had shifted, made room. Over dinner, Mary noticed subtle things. A photo of Noah and Emily on the fridge, 2 backpacks by the door, a drawing taped to the wall that read, "Family, me, Emily, Daddy, and Mary." Her name, scrawled in a child's hand, sat there like it belonged. After the children went to bed, she stayed. James sat across from her at the long kitchen island, the one she used to clean when no one was looking. She remembered wiping crumbs from its marble edges, never imagining she'd one day sit at it as an equal. "You didn't have to pay for the hospital," she said quietly. "I wanted to," James replied. "I didn't ask for a job either. I didn't offer it to make amends. You're good, and you needed options." Mary tapped her fingers on the ceramic mug. "You really are different." "I've had to be." Silence lingered, but it wasn't uncomfortable, it was searching. "You know I can't forget," she said. "I'm not asking you to. I still don't trust you." "That's fair. But he loves you." That landed like truth, undeniable, irrevocable. James's hands were steady as he folded a napkin, then unfolded it again. "I love him too." Mary's voice dropped, barely a breath. "He calls you Dad now." James nodded. "I know. I told him stories for years. I gave him reasons why you weren't there. I ran out of stories." James looked at her then, not with guilt but with something harder, acceptance. "You shouldn't have had to do that alone." Mary blinked. The first tear didn't fall, but it hovered. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "Neither do I. But I want him to grow up without shadows." "Then let's keep the light on." It wasn't a pact. It wasn't even peace. It was a beginning, delicate and unnamed, but real. That night Mary didn't sleep in the guest room. She left after midnight, kissed Noah on the forehead, and whispered something James didn't hear. As she reached the door, she turned. "I'll come back tomorrow." James nodded. "We'll be here." She walked out into the night, not as someone who had been invited, but as someone who had chosen to return. The days that followed weren't marked by grand gestures, but by the quiet rhythm of presence. Mary began coming in the mornings, at first just to drop Noah off, but she lingered longer each time, through breakfast, sometimes past lunch. She'd sit with Emily while she did crafts, or help Noah sort through his school folders. Her steps softened, her voice no longer guarded. James didn't push. He greeted her with coffee, offered space when she needed it, conversation when she didn't. There was a gentleness to the way he moved now, like someone who had learned not to take up too much room, yet still made space for others to grow. One Thursday afternoon, everything shifted. Noah came home from school quieter than usual. His shoulders slumped, his usual energy dulled. At first, they thought he was tired, but Emily pressed him in that fearless way children do. "They said I don't have a real family," he mumbled, "that you're not my real dad." The words hung there thick as fog. James knelt beside him. "What do you believe?" Noah shrugged. "I don't know." Emily didn't wait. She marched to her room, grabbed a drawing from her wall, and returned with it proudly in both hands. "This is us," she said. "And just because people don't understand something doesn't mean it's not real." She wrapped her arms around Noah in a hug that had no beginning or end. "You're my brother because I say you are." James looked at Mary, who was watching from the kitchen. Her eyes shimmered, not from sadness but awe, as if her son had just been saved by a 9-year-old with construction paper and conviction. That night, they had pancakes for dinner. No rules, no apologies. Noah laughed again, this time louder. Emily told a story about a squirrel with glasses. Mary corrected James's flipping technique, and they bickered playfully over who made the better batter. It was messy and warm, lived in. Later, while the kids played under their ever-expanding blanket fort, Mary sat with James on the back porch. "They're better at this than we are," she said. James nodded. "They don't carry the weight. Maybe we don't have to either." He looked at her, not with urgency, not with regret, just a quiet invitation to keep showing up. She met his gaze. "I'm scared." "So am I. But I still want to try." The sound of laughter floated through the window behind them. Noah's voice, high and clear, calling out for Emily. Mary smiled. He didn't used to laugh like that. James watched the stars begin to appear above them. Neither did I. In that moment it became clear. Healing wasn't loud. It didn't come with banners or announcements. It came with blanket forts and shared pancakes, with drawings taped to walls and hands reaching across unspoken hurts. It came with children who knew love not as a contract but as a constant. They didn't talk about the future, but for the first time it no longer felt unreachable. It felt like something already blooming beneath their feet. It began as an idea, quiet, almost foolish. James had passed the empty corner shop a dozen times on his morning walks. Boarded windows, faded for lease sign, nothing special. But one morning, as he sipped coffee alone on the bench across the street, he imagined the smell of fresh bread drifting through that window. And he thought of Mary. That same evening he asked her gently, almost hesitantly, If you could do anything, no limits, what would it be? Mary looked up from folding laundry. Her answer came without pause. A bakery, she said. Like my mother S. Nothing fancy, just warm, simple, somewhere people feel okay crying in. James smiled. What would you call it? Her breath caught. Alusha's dream. He nodded. Then let's make it real. Mary resisted at first. She questioned his motives, his timing, even her own readiness. But James didn't push. He just left a key on the kitchen table one morning attached to a ribbon and a note. It's yours if you want it. If not, I'll turn it into a library. But I think your bread would save more lives. Weeks passed. Then one day, Mary walked into the old corner shop and stood in the middle of the dust. She looked around as sunlight poured through the broken slats. She closed her eyes, and in the silence she heard her mother's humming. She called James that night. I want to try. He said nothing, just drove her to the bakery before sunrise the next morning. They painted. They cleaned. They laughed when the first oven caught fire. Noah and Emily drew menus with crayons. The community watched a broken space come alive brick by brick. Opening day was simple. No ribbon cutting. Just a sign in the window. Lucia's dream, fresh bread, warm coffee, open heart. The first customer was an old woman who cried over a cinnamon roll. The second was a young man who stayed 3 hours and didn't say a word. Mary moved through the space like she belonged. Her apron dusted with flour, her hands strong again. She told stories as she kneaded dough. She played Billie Holiday in the mornings. She let Noah work the cash register and gave Emily the title chief cookie taster. One afternoon, as Mary wiped down a counter, she noticed a tiny note tucked under a napkin dispenser. It said, in a child's handwriting, "Thank you for making my mom happy." No signature, but she knew. That night James stayed after closing. They didn't speak much. He washed. She dried. The silence was easy. Then Mary turned and said, "You gave me something I didn't think I deserved." James shook his head. "You built it. I just believed in it." Mary stared at the sign outside, glowing under streetlight. "Do you think dreams can be inherited?" "Yes," James said, "but they have to be chosen too." She leaned against the counter. "This place, it's not just about bread." "I know." It happened on a night that began like any other. Rain tapped at the windows, soft and rhythmic. Emily had fallen asleep with a book on her chest, the glow-in-the-dark stars above her bed flickering with age. James was finishing dishes when he heard it, Mary's voice, low but urgent. "Noah's warm, too warm." James was at the bedroom door in seconds. Noah lay still, his forehead glazed with sweat, breath shallow. Fear passed between them like electricity. They didn't speak. They moved. James fetched cold cloths, Mary took his temperature. They worked in sync, no second guessing. Noah whimpered, turning toward Mary, then toward James. "It hurts," he whispered. "Don't go." "I'm not going anywhere," James said, crouched beside the bed, his palm resting lightly on his son's back. The fever spiked past midnight. James sat with Noah on his chest, rocking gently in the dark. Mary brought tea, then sat beside them, her hand covering Noah's ankle, as if to hold him to earth. In that moment, they weren't two adults with a fractured past. They were one body of breath, waiting for a child's strength to return. Noah stirred just after 3 a.m. His voice was raspy, his eyes glassy, but he smiled. "You're still here." "Always," Mary said. Noah blinked slowly, then looked at James. "I want us to be a family." The room stopped breathing. Mary reached for him. "We already are." "No, like all of us, together, not just some days." James didn't answer right away. He looked at Mary. Her eyes shimmered not with fear but something heavier, longing. He whispered, "Do you think we could try again?" Mary didn't answer with words. She leaned into James, forehead resting against his, a tear falling into the space between them. "We never really started," she said. "Maybe that's what we're doing now." Later that morning, when the fever had broken and the city began to wake, James made pancakes shaped like hearts. Emily insisted on sprinkles. Noah requested extra crispy edges. Mary didn't argue, she simply poured the syrup. After breakfast, they sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching the world stretch into day. James held a mug of coffee with both hands, as if grounding himself in the moment. "I used to think family was something you earned," he said. "But I think maybe it's just something you choose, over and over." Mary nodded. "And protect." "Over and over." Noah leaned his head on James's shoulder. Emily took Mary's hand. They didn't sign papers that day. No rings, no ceremonies. But something binding happened nonetheless. An agreement sealed not by promise but by presence. From then on, every night ended with 4 toothbrushes in the bathroom sink, 4 names on the school form, 4 chairs set without second thought. A year passed without ceremony. The bakery thrived, not because it was trendy or perfect, but because it felt like a place you could enter tired and leave whole. Locals stopped calling it Lucia's dream. They just said, "Let's meet at Mary's." Emily and Noah grew like sunflowers, tall, surprising, reaching for everything. They fought sometimes, made up always. There were scraped knees and science fairs, sleepovers and secrets. But mostly, there was laughter that filled hallways like sunlight. One spring afternoon, Noah brought home a school project. "Build a timeline of your family." He asked for 4 photos, one of Mary baking, one of James reading on the porch, one of Emily hugging their dog, Charlie, who wasn't allowed on the couch but ruled it anyway, and the last, one he insisted on taking himself. The 4 of them sitting under the tree in the backyard, arms touching, eyes soft, not posing, just being. He drew a title at the top in bold green crayon, "Our Family Forever." James taped it to the fridge without a word. Mary didn't take it down, even when flour dust dulled the corners. On the evening of Emily's 10th birthday, they held a small picnic in the park. No balloons, no noise, just blankets, paper lanterns, and the smell of homemade bread. As the sky shifted from gold to lavender, Emily climbed into James's lap and whispered, "Did you know, when I said Noah was my brother that day, I just knew. Like the way birds know where to go." James kissed the top of her head. "I believe you." Mary watched from across the blanket. Their eyes met, not with intensity but with something gentler, gratitude. Later that night, back at the house, Emily and Noah fell asleep on the couch watching an old cartoon. James carried them one by one to their beds. When he returned downstairs, Mary stood in the doorway, barefoot, quiet. "I have something for you," he said. He opened a small box. Inside, a simple silver ring engraved with 4 names: James, Mary, Noah, Emily. No diamonds, no promises, just belonging. Mary's hand trembled as she slipped it on. "This isn't a proposal," James said. "It's a reminder." "Of what?" "That I will not leave again." She looked at him for a long time. Then she said the only thing that mattered: "Okay." That night they didn't speak of forever. They simply existed in it. 4 toothbrushes, 4 chairs, 1 home. Noah's school project stayed on the